Imagine playing for three of the biggest clubs in Europe and having zero haters. Incredible. A lot of people don't remember him now, but back in the day, Rui Costa was one of the most underrated players of his generation. He was so good that before Messi and Ronaldo came along, it was Costa and another legend who grabbed the headlines every week and ultimately led to the greatest midfield battle of all time. Apart from his football skills, his fans remember him even more for something else, how he sacrificed his own life just to make his fans happy. But I have to start from the beginning, because Costa's career was only a decision away from never even starting. Growing up as a kid, all Rui cared about was Benfica. See, he was so obsessed that his first words as a baby were the club's name. It wasn't just him though, his family were all Benfica fans. So Rui fell in love with the club immediately. His dad was a season ticket holder and came to all their games. And when Rui turned 9, his dad presented him with the opportunity of a lifetime. As a way of showing appreciation to their fans, Benfica decided to give the kids of season ticket holders a day in the life of the club and the chance to play in the training complex. Now, it was supposed to be all fun and games, but Rui saw it as something else. All his life, he had dreamt of playing for Benfica, and now, this was his chance. All thanks to his dad. And now he could finally follow in the footsteps of his biggest idol. And on the day of the event, he got a huge surprise. Whoa, Benfica legend Eusebio was in charge of the whole thing. He was the one picking the kids apart and dividing them into teams of 22 each. And finally, it got to Rui's turn. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for all his life. He had 10 minutes to prove that he could make it, or his dreams would be over. And with his first 2 touches of the ball, he dribbled past 2 other kids and left them for dead. But immediately after this, Eusebio took Rui off, and he broke down in front of his dad. Maybe Eusebio doesn't like me. I'm sorry to let you down, Dad. You see, the thing is, Eusebio had seen enough to know that this kid was going to be Portugal's next big star. So after the whole thing, as Rui and his dad were heading home, he caught up to him and informed Rui's dad of his decision. Your son impressed me today. Bring him tomorrow. In fact, make sure he keeps coming every day. I'll make sure he plays. Incredible! A few days later, Rui made his debut for the academy team. And this was the start of something special. For 10 years, he played for the academy system and continued to grow until things took a bad turn. And one day he came face to face with the decision that changed his career forever. Benfica wasn't playing well, and in Rui's final season at the club, they called him in and delivered the heartbreaking decision. We're sorry, Rui, but after this season, we won't be signing you, so you'll have to go play somewhere else. It broke Rui's heart, and in their next game against rivals Porto, they lost 4-0, and yet somehow the scoreline was in Rui's favor. See, some scouts from 3rd Division club Fave were supposed to have a meeting with the top guys at Porto to get some of the players on loan from the club. But the president of Porto ghosted them. As they were leaving, they suddenly remembered the academy boys at both Benfica and Porto had a game going on. So they came to watch, and even though Rui and his Benfica team lost, they were so impressed by how good he got that they took him in on loan from Benfica, and this decision changed Rui's career. At Fave, he was sensational. He took the team from a deadbeat club to finishing as runner-up and getting a promotion to the 2nd Division. But this wasn't Rui's biggest achievement this season. See, the U20 World Cup was around the corner, and after his magical performances, Rui earned a slot to go represent his nation. And at the tournament, he was a revelation. He teamed up with the guys like Luis Figo and João Pinto, and they became known as the Golden Portuguese Generation. They made it to the final, and after a tough match, it went to pens, and Brazil missed. Up stepped Rui with the weight of the entire nation on his back. The whole world was watching as he took his run up, hit the ball, and boom, made Portugal champions of the world. Just like that, Rui's career was on the rise. From almost being released a couple of months back, he was now being celebrated as a national hero. Despite all of this, Benfica still didn't think he was good enough and wanted to send him out on loan again. Crazy! But for some weird reason, they didn't put him back on the loan list, so Rui ended up staying, and Benfica didn't have a chance to play him, so in a league match, they gave Rui the chance to prove himself in the top division. And 90 minutes later, he became a guaranteed starter. He scored a hat-trick. That season, he led them to a runners-up spot, 2 points off Porto, and almost going undefeated. They won at the Portuguese Cup for the first time in 7 years. And after seeing Rui's amazing ability, Sporting decided they'd take Rui from Benfica and offered him a contract 10 times more than his Benfica wages. But Rui said no. See, he loved Benfica passionately, and in his first full season at the club, the kid did wonders, man. He led them to their first league title in 13 years. Now, it wasn't just Sporting that was interested. Rui was blowing up newspapers all over Europe, and pretty soon, the boys came calling. And one club was willing to do whatever it took just to get Rui's signature. Barcelona was going through a rebuild. They just lost their star, man. Michael Laudrup to Real Madrid, so they knew they had to get someone talented and special to replace him. And Rui, he'd be the perfect fit. Barca quickly agreed terms with Benfica, and just as they were about to sign the papers, everything changed. Benfica increased their asking price to 5.5 million euros, and Barca didn't have that kind of money at the time. So even though they really liked Rui, they had to pull out of the deal, and ended up signing Luis Figo for half the price. Anyone else would have gotten angry and thrown a tantrum or something, but Rui, he was different. He understood the situation. Benfica needed the money, or else they'd go broke. So when Fiorentina, who had just gotten promotion to Serie A, dropped the full amount, Rui paid the ultimate sacrifice just to save his childhood club. And at Fiorentina, he became an icon of the game. When he arrived, Rui was given the number 10 jersey in his new club. See, no one else had worn that for over half a season, and people thought it was cursed. But Rui was magical. He got on well with his teammates, but his link-up with Gabriel Batistuta was out of this world. Rui could pick a pass from all angles, and Batistuta could score from anywhere. Together, they tore it up in Italy, finishing 4th in the league and winning their first trophy in 21 years. The Fiorentina fans and the whole city of Florence fell in love with Rui and even gave him the nickname La Luca, meaning the light and the Prince of Florence. But Rui still had feelings for his first love, and he was determined to prove it to the whole world. In his 3rd season at Fiorentina, they were up against his old club, Benfica, in a preseason game. Now, this was only a friendly, and nothing was at stake. But with just 1 minute left to play, Rui came on and equalized Fiorentina to deny Benfica the victory, and his emotions ripped out. When asked about how he felt about the match, still in tears, Rui kept apologizing to the fans, and what happened next was truly special, because it was the only time in the club's history that they cheered on a player who scored against them. He managed to win the Super Cup with Fiorentina, but it was when repping his national team that disaster struck. In the last qualifying game for the World Cup in 1998, Portugal had to win to go through, and all Germany needed was a draw and they'd qualify. So the stakes were up, but Portugal had the lead, and with 16 minutes left, the coach decided he'd take off Rui after an amazing game. But this decision would haunt Rui for the rest of his life. The ref thought he was taking too long to get off the pitch, and before anyone else could explain what was going on, he gave Rui a straight red. Portugal was down to 10, and they couldn't hang on. Germany equalized 6 minutes later, and the match ended in a draw. Rui couldn't believe what had just happened, and the photo of him in tears on the bench was in every newspaper in the country. Still, Rui managed to pick himself up, and in 1998, together with Batistuta, they fired Fiorentina at the top of the league after 22 games, and it was going good, until, bang, disaster struck. Batistuta twisted his knee, and it kept him out for 5 games. By the time he got back, he just wasn't the same. They'd lost momentum, and when the season finally ended, they finished 3rd, 14 points off winners AC Milan, and to make it even worse, they lost the final at the Coppa Italia to Parma on away goals. This breakdown came at a huge cost too. See, Fiorentina had been trying to hide it, but between having good players and the costs of running the club, Fiorentina was having serious financial issues. So they had no choice but to come down to the ultimate decision. We have to sell our best players. And just like that, Batistuta was off to AS Roma for 36 million euros. Now that one half of the iconic duo was gone. Rui had the option of leaving, but he decided to stay, not just because for his love of the fans and the club, but for something else. See, some guys claim that the only reason Rui was considered good was because of Batistuta. So Rui decided to prove these doubters wrong, and with him gone, Rui was made the new club captain, and his game reached a whole new level. He helped Rui Costa win the Golden Boot off Batistuta's feet, and led them to another Coppa Italia. And it wasn't just Fiorentina Rui was balling out for. He was on a mission to redeem himself after what happened 3 years back. So, in Euro 2000, Rui put on an incredible show. In the opening game against England, Beckham with 2 assists had England up 2-0. But Rui was determined to make this one his night. And Portugal managed to pull off a 3-2 comeback victory, with Rui assisting all 3 goals. Costa was amazing throughout the tournament, and even though Portugal had finished in the semi-finals, he still made the team of the tournament. But on the flight back home, his agent broke the news, and this time, there was no escaping it. Rui, the club is in a financial mess, and if they don't sell you for big money, they won't even be able to register for next season. Rui was devastated. See, he loved Fiorentina and saw it as a second home. The people treated him well, but now they needed help. So, just like he did at Benfica, Rui was willing to sacrifice his career and happiness just to save the club. And that's when the bidding war started. Real Madrid was seriously interested in Rui and had even sent agents to Milan to seal the deal. But when AC Milan came along, Rui couldn't say no. And even though Real offered him more money, he chose Milan because they represented more to him. And in doing this, started the midfield battle of the century. Since Madrid missed out on Rui, they decided to turn their attention to the next best thing, Zinedine Zidane, and snapped him up from Juve. Rui cost Milan 42 million euros. And the only 30-year-old who cost more in football at the time was Zidane. And when the comparison started, it was a full-on debate. Zidane was popular, but Rui's talent was something else. His teammates at Milan, Inzaghi, and Shevchenko all described him as the best in the world and said he should win the Ballon d'Or. Even a former winner of the award who'd left Milan approved the decision. George Weah was now representing Marseille. But when he heard Rui had moved to Milan, he wished he could stay a bit longer because to him, it would have been an absolute honor to play with Rui. Despite all of this high praise, Rui found it tough in the first season at Milan. After breaking his wrist in the first game, he had missed a full month and struggled to get any rhythm going. And this affected his international form too, because in the 2002 World Cup, Rui and Portugal's golden generation couldn't make it past the group stage. Milan wasn't willing to take any chances with Rui, so they signed Rivaldo to act as a replacement. But this decision was all Rui needed to have the best season of his career. In 2002 to 2003, Rui hit another gear and began balling out every week. He was firing in all competitions. But in the Champions League, he hit peak form. 4 assists in a game versus Deportivo, had one commenter going on air to say he was 3 times better than Zidane. He went on to hit another 3 assists in the competition and then came to the match that the whole world had been waiting to see. Milan versus Madrid in the Champions League semi-finals. All eyes were on Rui and Zidane, the 2 greatest midfield magicians of the decade. And it was Rui who came out on top, assisting the only Shevchenko's goal as Milan won on aggregate. And ending the debate. Milan won the Champions League in 2003, and Rivaldo, the dude was warming the bench. In 03 and 04, Rui won the UEFA Super Cup, and finally won the league he'd been chasing for so many years with Milan. But it came at a cost too, a change that signaled the end of Rui's career. Ancelotti brought in a young kid from Sao Paulo, Ricardo Kaká, and towards the end of the season, he began dropping Costa to play the Brazilian kid. People thought Rui would be mad at this decision, but his response made even the rival fans fall in love with him. Why should I be mad? 2 years from now, this kid will win the Ballon d'Or. Rui knew he didn't have the energy like before to match Kaká. So instead of hating on the kid, he pushed him to help him grow. See, Rui knew his career at the top was nearing the end. But there was one last thing missing from his trophy case. A trophy with the Portuguese senior national team. And all he wanted was one last shot, and he became determined to make this one count. The 2004 edition of the Euros was a special one for Rui. This one was being played in Portugal, his own country, so he had the support of the entire nation on his back. He also had his old buddy Figo, a young Deco, and the emerging Cristiano Ronaldo. Rui knew he still had energy left in his tank, and despite being used mainly as a sub, he scored in 2 games, including a stunner against England, as Portugal made it to the final. Rui was face to face with destiny, 90 minutes away from the crowning moment of his life. All he had to do was win one more game, but this last step just proved to be too much. Greece shocked everyone to beat Portugal 1-0 and win the Euros. Rui was devastated, And in his next season at Milan, he couldn't do much to stop them from becoming the biggest bottle job in Champions League final history. Coming on as a sub to watch Milan let a 3-goal lead slip to lose to Liverpool on penalties. After this, Rui could see everything clearly. A young Kaká taking his place, and time no longer on his side. There was only one place Rui wanted to go next, and even though the top club still wanted him to play for them, Rui called a meeting with Milan and made one final request. "I know I still have 1 year left on my contract, but please, let me go to Benfica. That's all I want." The guys at Milan immediately agreed. Rui never complained at the club, and even when he got benched, he helped the new kid grow. So it was only fair they'd grant his request. And on the plane back home, Rui promised himself he'd give the Benfica fans the last 2 years of his career. And so in 2 seasons, he helped them qualify for the Champions League twice, and even scored 10 goals in his last season. After that, Rui announced his decision to retire and became known as the first dude to end his game with 0 haters, because in all the clubs he played for, they knew he gave them everything, loved them, and fought until the end. Now he's club president of Benfica, and looking back at his career, Rui realizes how lucky he was, and didn't have to go down the wrong path like Ronaldinho, and realized how much fans loved him. Ronaldinho, just like Rui, was one of the best in the world, until one bad move sent him to prison. Bet you're wondering what he did. Well, click the link right here.